Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss. In Rick and Morty Season 4, Episode 3, one crew over the Crewcoo's Morty reveals that Rick hates heisty plot twists so much that he creates the world's most elaborate heist, one that includes genocide, just to stop Morty from selling another heist to Netflix. With all the endless, exhaustive double crosses, it's a bit tough to keep up with all the jokes and deep cut references that are flying past us, so let's go back through this episode scene by scene for all the subtle animation details you might have overlooked. Spoilers ahead, let's get started. The episode opens with Rick and Morty making their way through these ancient ruins. Morty scales a cliff wall while Rick hovers beside him, eating lunch. If you look closely as the bag flies past us, you can see he's eating Arby's. And this whole gag was lifted from a scene in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, in which Kirk climbs El Capitan in Yosemite and Spock floats beside him in hover boots. Kirk falls and Spock saves him, just as Rick does for Morty here. They zip up in these anti-booby suits to protect from the booby traps in these ruins. All a nod, of course, to Raiders of the Lost Ark, including the boulder. Love that they included the donk when it hits them. And it's probably not important, but I love the detail that was put into the design of these ruins and the ancient culture it once was. Like, notice the statues are wearing backpacks and beanies and headphones, and they appear to be riding segways, as if this was some hipster culture that collapsed under the weight of its own smug. And one of the traps is snakes.
Total waste of snakes.
A nod to the snakes and Raiders, of course, but also to Rick's recurring use of snakes and his trick where he makes people think he can turn people into snakes by always keeping a spare snake up his leg. Instead of treasure, Rick is disappointed by the contents, just like the Nazis were disappointed by the contents of the Ark of the Covenant. But in this case, it's a reference to another Harrison Ford movie, an origami horse, just like the origami unicorn in Blade Runner.
It's a calling card from Miles Knightley, a heist artist, aka a hipster dick whose adventures are 60% putting a crew together and 40% revealing that the robbery already happened and he's not worth our time because he's a hack piece of shit.
Rick's anti-heist rant is actually based on co-creator Dan Harmon's hatred of the heist genre. Films like Ocean's 11, Inception, Now You See Me, and yes, I would argue the latest two MCU films, Spider-Man Far From Home and Avengers Endgame, both of which were centered around heists. But I went into the real reason Harmon might hate Marvel in the recent episode of Rick Explained, so go check it out. Marvel fan culture is definitely a target in this episode though, as they head to Knightley's Heist Con, modeled on Comic-Con. Notice how it features its own Hall H. Rick's pride at wanting a professional tier badge and refusal to buy one is a joke about industry types having too big an ego to buy a convention badge. There are booths for pocket grapplings and nightly vision goggles, and a nod to Ocean 12 and Ocean 13 star Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Ooh, a signing with Catherine's Alpha through Omega Joneses.
And the way you enter is by cutting glass circles like they do in heist movies. The attendees include cameos by the nerd from Blips and Chits in the Morty Night Run episode.
This guy's taking Roy off the grid. This guy doesn't have a social security number for Roy.
And another guy cosplaying as a safe. He later snatches the mailbox that Rick chucks the crystal skull into. Rick tries to check in as a professional.
He's a getaway driver with Asperger's, and my butthole is a demolitions expert.
Rick is referencing Baby Driver, another heist film in which the getaway driver has a condition that some might describe as such, and his demolishing butthole, as we saw his mecha giant form do last episode. And Rick assembles his crew with a jazzy team assembly montage with music and editing in the style of Ocean's 11. Each of his teammates he greets with a hand grasp and a "you son of a bitch," parodying the trope from Predator and the Fast and Furious films. The movie MacGruber also included a hilarious parody of this kind of putting the crew together montage that also ends with an abrupt twist. And I love how Glar got a gig playing the piano when clearly his fingers are way too massive to ever be able to play piano keys. Angie Flint appears to be a Lara Croft-inspired heisty adventurer with cybernetic Swiss Army knife hands that Rick mocks as impractical, referencing his own super practical cybernetic inserts that actually show up later this episode. And then there's Truckula, a monster truck in which the monster is a vampire. There's a nod to the putting the team together montage in Ocean's 11 with the Mormon brothers who race monster trucks. Also in this demo derby is a ridiculous banana car. And then after putting the team together, they return to get their con badges. Notice how each badge has the image of Knightley's origami horse. In Hall H, we meet Miles Knightley, voiced by Justin Theroux, perhaps a nod to his pointless Master Codebreaker character from The Last Jedi, and he finishes a story of a recent heist.
Police stole the paintings because the police were us. in police outfits.
He's referencing the heist in Ocean's 11, which ends with the thieves disguising themselves as SWAT officers, and the Thomas Crown Affair, which features an elaborate art heist. Rick bypasses security.
Lab coat, rip off Doctor Strange.
Rick is referencing the Cloak of Levitation from Doctor Strange, which also could be a nod by Dan Harmon to his own uncredited work in the Doctor Strange film, in which he said that Marvel used none of his ideas. Another example of how this episode is targeting both the heist genre and the MCU. The MacGuffin that Knightley proposes stealing in the heist-off is the crystal skull of Horowitz, Horowitz, a reference to the Crystal Skull in the crappy fourth Indiana Jones movie, and possibly Rick and Morty staff writer Dave Horowitz. And we meet Knightley's 8, a la Ocean's 8, which includes snake arms, double microwave, monitor lord, key catcher, and shapeshiftress, plus the 3 from Rick's 5, which the numbers 8 and 5 is kind of like, yeah, Ocean's 8 and Fast 5. Their heist involves swiping keys while pushing a hotel towel cart, just like the Ocean's 11 crew did, and an art vault, just like in Ocean's 12, and this vault contains a parody of American Gothic, but Rick reveals that his real crew is really just the robot Heistotron, and during this we get a glimpse of the heist screenplay that Morty's writing, with the words approaches and his misspelled. There's also a lame twist about a dead body being a cake. Before I continue, thank you to Monday.com for sponsoring this episode. Monday.com is a team management tool that's simple and flexible enough to meet the needs of just 2 people working together, as well as vastly complex workplace operations of thousands spanning different departments and time zones. Now, I'm not sure if Monday.com exists in the MCU, but you can imagine how helpful it would be if S.H.I.E.L.D. could use it to assign tasks. You could let Talos know which task he's supposed to do as which human. Dude probably gets confused. Monday.com currently has over 80,000 teams on its platform, from startups to Fortune 500 companies like McDonald's. We use it at New Rockstars to centralize our editing process and improve communication. Monday.com's intuitive design, uniquely flexible structure, and scalability has driven teams at all kinds of companies to adopt their platform. They were even named Startup of the Week by Forbes. Monday.com aims to make every user feel empowered and part of something bigger than their own individual tasks, and as a result, to boost productivity and transparency. Download Monday.com today using the link in the description below. Rick uses Heistotron to assimilate all 3,329 convention attendees to be in on it, and they rip Miles Knightley to pieces. As always, the violence is horribly graphic. They rip out his bones and ribcage and skull, leaving his skin as a droopy mask. Ugh. Another looter steals the head of Abraham Lincoln, not the head of the late Abradorf Linkler from season 1, different guy. And to combat Heistotron from assimilating everything in existence as part of his crew, Rick instead assembles a random team, including the return of Mr. Poopy Butthole, now Professor Poopy Butthole, who fends off karate attacks from his students using his cane and slow-motion berserk combat skills similar to Hart in the Kingsman movies. They also recruit the Greek god Hephaestus, who works in a volcanic forge. I love the detail that he can see their reflection in his hammer. And then they find Ventriloquiver, as well as Tuskla, an alternate reality Elon Musk, but with tusks. Elon Musk actually voices his character in this episode. And last March, he changed his Twitter name to Elon Tusk as a reference to his role in this episode. Notice how Tuskla's designs on his dry erase board feature coils wrapped around tusks, as if his tusks were like the flux capacitor style inspiration for his inventions. Meanwhile, Heistotron applies lame, obvious heist tactics to steal a planet's core. It disguises itself as a security guy with a name tag Hank, a pizza guy with a name tag Tony. He crushes the planet's surface with a colossal security camera and a pizza box that drills into it, kills the entire planet's population. I like how the news graphic says 0 injuries. And on one of the screens, one of the residents was peeing in a corner at the moment of this. But the one resident we see escaping is attacked by angry birds as he flees into the mountains with wildlife. The whole planet gets wrecked. And looking back on this episode, yeah, again, we must acknowledge that Rick committed a genocide just to stop Morty from selling his script to Netflix. And Rick introduces Randotron.
Instead of 2 heist movies I slept through, Randotron's algorithm is derived from the plots of 3 David Lynch movies I pretended to like to make my friends shut up.
Yeah, in Rick's mind, the narrative opposite of plotty, contrived heist movies is the surrealist, non-plot stories of David Lynch, like Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, and Twin Peaks. Rick passes the time by playing Minecraft, as he did with Morty in the episode The Rick and Morty Date, and due to Ventriloquiver's knowledge of the stars not being properly aligned, Rick realizes that the Earth has already been heisted, with the night sky playing on a pre-recorded loop, a nod to the trick that they use on Dennis Hopper in Speed. A brief shot shows the Earth in a massive grid of collective planets, along with other ones like Uranus, with a bite taken out of it, Spiky Ramus, it's got an Illuminati eye, maybe a nod to Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls, Crumph, Bigham, M9999, Zipple, Big Pluto, Mars, Fran Dreshlakar, probably a nod to Fran Drescher, Timus, Flump, and this has a big butt, maybe it's the butt dimension that we've seen before, and Schwing, probably a nod to Wayne's World, and then in the lower right corner, Scrooby something Flooby Doop, yeah, probably another one of these nonsense words that Justin Roiland just likes to improvise. Randotron sends them all on random bits. Hephaestus eats Poo-recious brand diapers at Vomit's Grocery, then does one-handed push-ups on the roof. Ventriloquiver runs in circles on a polar ice cap. Tuskla puts a turkey in the freezer, then bakes the fridge items. Morty subscribes to a boring-looking History of New York podcast. And Professor Poopy Butthole runs a cattle auction. It all ends with Rick confronting Heistotron on his space station, heightening in a series of impossible-to-follow double crossings.
Oh, he's learning.
I'm most curious, algorithm.
It appears the only perfect heist is one that was never written.
It's a reference, obviously, to the NORAD AI tic-tac-toe climax in the movie War Games.
Learning. Strange game. The only winning move is not to play.
And both Heistatron and Brandatron are voiced by Dan Harmon, so all the commentary about how robotic and formulaic heists are is coming from his voice directly. Morty makes his pitch meeting at Netflix, which looks exactly like the exterior of Netflix's actual Sunset Bronson office in Hollywood. In the hallway, there are posters, Netflix, your movie here, and Weirder Stuff 3, or yeah, Stranger Things 3. But we learn Morty losing interest in his own pitch was all an Inception-style heist by Rick, who waits outside on his ship, just like how Brad Pitt waits for Clooney outside the prison at the end of Ocean's 11 to give him a ride. And Rick eats a lollipop throughout this episode as a nod to Pitt in that movie, who's always eating candy and junk food in every scene. And finally, in the post-credit scene, ex-Professor Poopy Butthole realizes that Rick must have trained all of his students karate to attack him, and they see dark storm clouds forming on the horizon, and Rick says,
"Could be a twister."
a pun not just for a tornado, but a coming additional twist, all while Morty twists a Rubik's Cube. Last episode similarly ended with gathering storm clouds. We'll see if this storm on the horizon is indicating some darkness looming in on upcoming episodes. The next episode won't come out for another 2 weeks in December, but they will be titled Claw and Hoarder Special Rickdoms Morty, probably a murder mystery SVU episode, and Rattlestar Rick Lactica, a Battlestar Galactica episode. So let me know what you think this post-credit scene could be referencing in the comments below. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EA Voss, follow New Rockstars and socials, and subscribe to our Rick Explain podcast feed to get early audio versions of all this shit. Thanks for joining me. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.